Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
So I didn't have a show planned today, but I really want to talk about this because I think it's phenomenal information that can help a lot of people out there. And today's show is brought to you by White Oak Pastures, shrnetwork.biz/White Oak, and use the code Superhuman and save 15% off. Why is this relevant? Because of the discussion we're going to have today. You'll see why. There are foods that really are better than medicine, depending on what your goals are. If you want to lengthen telomeres inexpensively, eat a lot of beef. We did that show with Patrick Dolan about a study that showed, they looked at 26 different foods and beverages, and the only thing that increased telomere length in the human subjects was beef, red meat. So let's move past that for a second. In order to discuss this particular food, I first have to talk about peptides. Peptides are amazing things. Peptides are cellular messengers, like a message in a bottle from one cell to the other, telling the cell to do things. Unlike pharmaceutical drugs that mask symptoms that don't really fix anything, peptides actually fix stuff. And that's why they're so popular today, because people are looking for cures and not cover-ups. But with that being said, there's one peptide that is very underestimated for its value in increasing health span and actually reversing a lot of the damages of aging. And it's thymosin beta-4. And I know thymosin beta-4 isn't a really sexy peptide to a lot of people. It's like, oh, I've heard of TB500, thymosin beta-4. Yeah, I stack it with my BPC 157, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so first of all, we have to talk about some of the research on thymosin beta-4 that generally isn't discussed in this community, but where we're looking for anti-aging and or performance enhancement. First of all, thymosin beta-4 is the most abundant peptide in a fetus's body as it's forming, and there's a reason for that. A long time ago, I had a conversation with Ron Penna. I may have been smoking some weed, and I was either in the water in my pool, or maybe I was in Mexico with Elisa, and I started thinking about the womb, the oven where we are built inside of our mothers, and I started to think about the umbilical cord. Like, the umbilical cord is this huge, high bandwidth cable that connects us to our mothers, and every strand, I think of it as fiber optics, lots of fibers. Some of them go to the heart, some of them go to the brain, some of them go to the spine, some of them go to muscles. And this is where all of the material and source code comes from to make that little fetus into a person. And thymosin beta-4 is the single most abundant peptide of all of the peptides, not just the thymic peptides, in a baby. So when you start to dig down and look at some of the research, and I'm going to put some of this research up first to kind of couch this in. Let's see which one this is. This one I want to put up first. Thymosin beta-4 prenatal administration improves fetal development and halts side effects due to preterm delivery. Preemies are born with incomplete bodies, but if they give the mother higher doses of circulating thymosin beta-4, it gets done fast. It hurries up and it fixes and finishes the body, all of the organs and so on. There's also a good study in rodents that shows, so rodents don't have a trimester. They have different sort of fetal development categories. And one of them is called the E category, and it's like the end of the development. And like humans, the brain is formed in that later development stage. And they gave rodents 2 shots during that phase, separated by about 6 days. And what they discovered was the baby rodents that were born from the mothers that got a little extra push from the thymosin beta-4 had bigger brains. And there is a direct link to intelligence and bigger brains. Now, I'm not suggesting that people go out there and start injecting their wives with thymosin beta-4 at the third trimester when the brain is forming to make smarter babies. But maybe 100 years from now, we'll know that, and they'll actually be doing that. That's all I'm saying. This phenomenon exists. So when I used to talk to Ron Penna about these crazy ideas I had, I said, there is a blueprint, our DNA, whatever, in our body, that tells how to build a kidney, tells how to build a heart, tells how to make chondrocytes in joints. And this blueprint was executed as part of kind of an operating system when you were in your mother's womb. And there are a variety of genes called neonatal genes. They were only used during that phase of building a human. And I used to say to him, why can't we switch those neonatal genes back on when we want to repair a heart? And to some degree, the healing process does this. However, the healing process kind of fixes things by incorporating the bad tissue in with the new tissue. What if you could actually, like, you replace a quarter panel on a car after it's been hit, right? When you bring it to a body shop and all they do is use a hammer, a pull hammer, and red lead and Bondo, and then the quarter panel never looks the same. But sometimes when your insurance company pays for it, they pay for the entire quarter panel to be replaced with a brand new one. Now it's a big deal. So this is tantamount to the way we wish the body would heal. We wish the body would replace the bad part, not just build over it, which is the typical healing process. Well, interestingly, a study came out that said utilizing developmentally essential secreted peptides such as thymosin beta-4 to remind the adult organs of their embryonic state, new direction in anti-aging and regenerative therapies. And this is true. Thymosin beta-4 appears to be what stimulated your body to follow the blueprint and build stuff. And if we can stimulate that same process again as we age, we can rebuild stuff. And that's the angle here. And it's legitimate. It's real. We know that a dose of thymosin beta-4 after ischemic events like ischemic stroke or ischemic heart attacks, 6 milligrams within the first 6 hours after the event, it completely eliminates any necrotic tissue, any fibrotic tissue, any evidence that you had the heart attack, whether you had or that you had the stroke. We know this. Studies have shown this. We also know that thymosin beta-4 taken at the proper doses, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, can actually reverse fibrotic tissue. Fibrotic tissue is associated with aging, and it's thought to be a byproduct. The body just turns to wood over time. Things become less flexible, muscles, heart tissue, the nervous system. And reversing fibrotic tissue can be achieved with the right doses of thymosin beta-4. Now, just stay with me. I know I'm going to talk about food, but I have to set the stage for the power of thymic peptides, or thymic hormones, let's call them. So if we accept the idea that these peptides can turn on neonatal genes that will actually repair stuff over time, and if we can accept that they can heal damage by removing the damaged tissue, the fibrotic tissue, and replacing it, it does this through a phenomenon called actin sequestration. Then we can understand that the power of the thymic hormones is probably, of all the peptides that claim to help with aging, none of them, and I don't mean for the brain, for anything, none of them do what thymosin beta-4 does. Why doesn't it work for most people? Because they take too small of a dose. So All of the studies in rodents indicate that you only need a bolus dose of thymosin beta 4 about every 7 days, and quite often not for very long, maybe a few weeks to a few months. And the trajectory of healing continues after the therapy stops. So thymosin beta 4 sets things in motion that keep happening even after you stop taking it. And there is a way to get thymic hormones without buying them from a peptide company and injecting them. And that is by eating bovine thymus gland. Now, many of you have eaten it. If you come from Hispanic, Latin, Italian, Greek backgrounds, you probably heard the word. Maybe you didn't eat it because you were grossed out by it, but your grandparents and your great-grandparents, they ate something called sweetbreads. Now, you got to be careful because when you buy sweetbreads, you want thymus gland, not pancreas. Interestingly, because both of them actually are sweet and they are both glands, a lot of butchers lump together the pancreas and the thymus, but you want exclusively thymus gland. And there's plenty of recipes and ways to cook thymus gland. I'm going to suggest that supplements aren't the way to, and I'll tell you why. The hormone is a liquid or suspended in fluid. It's not dry. So by desiccating thymus gland, which is what most supplements do, drying them out at the temperature, the original temperature of the animal's body when it was alive. That's what desiccation means. Actually robs you of those peptides you want because they are suspended in the fluids inside the gland. So it's much better, in my humble opinion, to buy bovine. You can even use, I know they sell lamb sweetbreads too, but it's better to take them and cook them in a low temperature, long process, like a crock pot type process. You can put gravies in it and stuff like that if you're kind of skeeved out about the idea of eating this. But it would be much better, I believe, much more effective for low cook heating to cook it in some sort of recipe that your grandmother used and your great grandmother used, and eat sweetbreads from time to time, because you're going to get a huge dose of thymic peptides in that meal. A lot of the recipes call for soaking the thymus gland before cooking it in water for 2 hours or milk for 2 to 4 hours. Now, some of these are probably because maybe it has a gamey taste that most people don't like, but if you put it in a sauce, I don't think it matters. But the reality is that if you slow cook it, then you're going to preserve most of those hormones intact in the flesh before you eat it. I'm not a fan of frying it. I know a lot of people like to bread it and fry it. That's how, if you go to a restaurant and they have sweetbreads on the menu, they're usually lamb, not necessarily bovine. Bovine, I think, are better for us. I think Dr. Sean Baker has shown conclusively that beef is really good for humans. But they fry it, they pan fry it, and maybe in the center it's still rare. So maybe some of the thymic hormones are preserved closer to the center. But I think the best way to do it is to prepare it in sauces where the juices of the thymus gland get incorporated into the juices of the sauces, and you're getting everything. And when you slow cook it, we know that they stay intact. The peptides will stay intact longer. So I would suggest to people that starting to incorporate this old world food that you may or may not have ever heard of, but if you have grandparents still, if you're lucky enough, and they came from other countries, they probably will tell you, oh yeah, we ate sweetbreads all the time, but you can't get them anymore. But you still can get them. You can online. There's an opportunity. White Oak Pastures has them. In fact, I spoke to Jenny this morning, and she is going to separate the pancreatic sweetbreads from the thymus sweetbreads, so my audience can order it from them. And I think if you do a little digging, you're going to find out that people in your family have, especially if you're Italian or French, if you're European, if you're Hispanic. I think the Spanish people call it like it's MOJJ, mujeres or something like that. But a lot of old world people ate sweetbreads regularly. And I think it's worth your time and effort to research it, because if you can increase the thymic hormones in your body, I predict you will age so much better. And there's already evidence that the thymic hormones seem to improve immune response. And we have a lot of autoimmunity out there, and there's a lot of people that would benefit from improving immune response. So the other thing that's interesting to me is that as we age, especially past 30 years old, our thymus glands shrink. So think of this in the context of the reproductive years of a woman. We know as a woman gets closer to 40, they say her pregnancies become high risk. Could it be because of the shrinking thymus gland in the mom? Could it be, as we see, high levels of thymic hormones, especially thymosin beta 4, are flooding the baby's body as it's being built, and an immature birth, as in a premature baby, their body isn't fully formed. And studies show that by giving the baby and the mother thymosin beta 4 speeds up the development. So the baby catches up like it was in the womb for 9 months. So could it be that the high-risk pregnancies could be eliminated to women who want to have babies at later dates by supplementing thymosin beta 4? Or maybe just eating more sweetbreads. And I know people are going to call Carl. No, I'll probably get kicked off of. I'm kicked off of YouTube right now for a show I did a year ago about LL37 and the epidemic. It was a peer-reviewed study, and they just kicked me off a year later for 7 days. The stuff that we talk about on the show is legit. It's real. It's not bullshit. Even though this is not technically a show, it's just me sharing some information. But I really do think that people should look into increasing their intake of thymus gland, whether it be from sheep or beef. I think beef is better. The thymus is 2 lobes. It's right here in the middle of your chest. It's 2 lobes. And in cows, 1 single gland is about a half a pound. I mean, that'll feed you and somebody else. You can mix other meats in with it too if you want to. Put some beef, put some sausage in with it. Make an Italian sauce. In fact, those of us who are Italian, we should start adding beef thymus to our meat sauces. And you don't have to tell your family. Sweetbreads are delicious. They have a tender, almost they have a tender texture to them, and they literally do have a little sweetness to them, but it's not gamey or anything like that. You could probably put in a tomato sauce and no one would even know, and you don't have to tell them that you're helping them live better and healthier. But we have to start to understand the power of thymosin beta 4. So let's talk about dosing. If you are using thymosin beta 4, I use 1 milligram post-workout in my stack. But once a week, I take 5 milligrams. Why do I take 5 milligrams? Because all the studies that show reversal of fibrotic tissue, resolution of ischemic damage, increases in organ repair, all of those studies look at a 0.8 milligram per kilogram in a rat. And there's a conversion, and it's on the internet. You can look for it, but if I recall right, so you take reduce me to kilograms. So I'm 220. I'm 100 kilos. Times that by a 0.8, and then divide that by 0.891, I believe, and that gives me 5 milligrams of thymosin beta 4 to have that kind of result, or projected have that kind of results that they had in the rodents, and just once a week. Now, I do take a milligram post-workout. I don't train every day. I train 5 days on an average. So I am supplementing with a little bit more, but I could use it. I'm 64 years old. I'm going to be 65 in a couple months, and I want to stay vital. I want to stay fit. I want to stay strong. So I'm going to lean into it. But the way to use thymosin beta 4 is not to trickle it. but to use large doses. I helped a guy who was 135 pounds, and I think he needed 3.5 milligrams once a week. I mean, it's not going to break the bank, but it's well worth it. And if you also include sweetbreads, thymus gland sweetbreads into your diet, I predict you're going to see some amazing results as well. Remember, beef was the only thing that extended telomeres, not fake meats, not vegetables, not vegetable-based superfoods, not greens powders, none of that shit. The thing that increased the length of telomeres in humans was red meat, beef. We're being told constantly how bad it is for us. If you subscribe to the idea that improving and maintaining telomere length is going to help you age better, then you should be eating beef every single day. Don't make it a political thing. We've been told to follow the science, except when the science contradicts the narrative. Then don't follow it. So that's it. I'm not going to belabor this any longer. I've talked for 21 minutes. I hope I've piqued your interest into opening up the door to an old world culinary specialty called sweetbreads. Find ways to make it. Contact your mom. Maybe she remembers your grandmother doing it. Mom, do you remember cooking? Did you ever eat sweetbreads when you were a kid? Did anybody eat them? Did you talk about them? There is magic in what's known as the offal. All the stuff inside this viscera, this containment area where we have all our organs and glands and everything. There's magic in there. Anybody in the audience that's a hunter like me knows when the coyotes run down a deer, they don't eat the back hamstrings. They don't eat the meaty meat. They eviscerate the animal. They eat the intestines and everything in there first. There's a reason they do that. They are not driven by marketing. They didn't see a TV commercial that said this is good and this is bad. Evolution tells them what to eat. We have forgotten what to eat, and it's time to revive this. So I hope you do some research on sweetbreads. I hope you include them in your diet. I would love to hear your recipes. Send them to onair@superhumanradio.net. Please share the show. Social media is literally putting me out of business. I'm being sincere about this. I'm tired of fighting uphill. I'm sharing good information, peer-reviewed studies, and I'm being deplatformed constantly, 7 days here, a week there. I guess 7 is a week. But the bottom line is, this is valuable information. Why do they want to keep it from you? You should be asking yourself that question. All right, look, thank you so much for being here today. Here, let me show you a picture. Here you go. Sweetbreads. That's what they look like raw from a cow. One of those is about 1/2 pound. Put it in your, like I said, soak it in milk or water for about 2 hours before you use it. Some people like to cut it into little chunks and make it like chicken nuggets. But definitely learn how to use it in your diet. I'm sure you will be rewarded for it. And thank you for being here today and listening. And don't forget, please share the show. Okay, that's it. That's all I got.